Welcome to the grind.
There's a 2-hour window I get to see my woman. There's a clock ticking on her. It ain't my friend. Work wasn't easy, but we've been fit. Oh, I'm home, and she's off to bed. Oh, no. Money, my baby liar.
Welcome, everyone, to another, we're still doing it, another edition of the Daily Grind. I'm your host, Devin Murray. What a kick in the nether regions last night. On the betting front, we went 1-2. Oh no. We waited for the games to get kicked off because the lines were a little large. So we ended up snagging the Raptors at -4.5 while they were down to the Wizards. They come back, they win by 4, lose the bet, of course. Hopped on the Celtics while they were down, got them at -7.5, 2.5 point improvement from where it opened. They won handily. And then we bet the Bucks before the game at 9.5. And what happens? They're up 17 in the fourth quarter. I believe they were back up 15 at one point, and Giannis had 2 free throws and clanked not one, but 2 of them. And then they were up 12, I think, 13 with like a minute left. And the Bucks are just trying to waste some time. They swing it all around, and Giannis gets the ball in the wing, has no one in front of him, like literally no one. If you're watching the video podcast, maybe I go through and find it and show you the screen grab, and just clanks a 3. Like, dude, take 3 dribbles in and go dunk it. Go back to, I just don't understand. And then, of course, even then, was still in good shape, was covering by 3 points. Zach LaVine, of course, hits a 3 from like 29 feet, a little pull-up, and then Giannis gets fouled again, goes 1 for 2, and the Bucks win by 9, and I lose 2 bets by half a point. At that point, on the Sacramento game front, we were leaning the Cavs because we thought that De'Aaron Fox was going to be out. De'Aaron Fox was a late clear, and so we stayed away from that game completely. So I feel pretty vindicated about all of my plays. It's just real frustrating whenever you lose by, half points. And I've lost quite a few by half a point this year. And I've won just a couple, and you'd hope that at some point that starts to even out, but it is what it is. We move on. We don't sit and dwell on it. We're just going to move on, because you know what? We got 7 games tonight. And, oh, dear listener, these aren't just any regular season games. These are part of the in-season tournament. Whoa! Oh! Whoa! It's a tournament. But not just any tournament. It's in the middle of the season. Whoa, what? Okay, I'm sorry about that. But if you're a long-time listener, you remember that I took out a strategy on the in-season courts, the in-season tournament courts, because they're so gaudy. I thought surely this is going to have some effect on player performance. And so I sprinkled just a little bit on all the unders. And you know what? Like, none of them hit. Like, I didn't play the Bucks because that court wasn't wacky looking. And that under hit, and then the Bulls was the only other under that hit. The rest of them went over, and so I was like, well, scrap that idea. But they were really competitive games. I saw something on Twitter that said that the first night of the in-season tournament was the lowest average margin of victory for an NBA slate of games with a minimum of 6 games, I think. The second lowest margin of victory averaged across all the games in NBA history. So while my initial thought process on this was incorrect, I thought let's rehash some of this stuff after we get a little bit more data, because even though all of my unders lost, it's kind of weird that all of the overs hit. No? A little weird? Am I reading tea leaves? Maybe. Sweet tea leaves. Actually, just kidding. I hate sweet tea. So here's what I found after doing just a little bit of research. And I think I've got a couple of things that you guys might be interested in tonight. Look, the in-season tournament, they want it to be different. They want us as the fans to treat it differently. So we're going to go a little obscure today with our betting patterns, with our betting theses, if you will. We're going to get to the over and unders thing in a minute, but let's first start with what we usually bet here, what we usually talk about on a nightly basis, which is just the spread. How are these teams doing? You know, we just talked about how close these games have been. How are the favorites doing? How are the home and road teams doing? Is there some kind of pattern here through these first 15 games? Well, if you think that that's a decent sample size, let me throw this stat at you. Home dogs, that's right. Home teams playing that are not favored are 6-1 in the in-season tournament. You know the only team that's screwing that up? That's right, the team that screws everything up, the Washington Wizards. They were 3.5 point favorites at home against Charlotte in the first night of the in-season tournament, and they lost. They just straight up lost by 7, couldn't keep it close. So keep that little nugget in mind. When we remove the Washington Wizards, this is an even better bet, because that's going to come into play again later. Now, overall, home teams are 9-6, so home favorites are 3-5 if you're decent at math. Sorry, snitch. Didn't mean to beat you to the punch there. And for tonight's purposes, we have 3 or 4, depending on which book you're looking at. There's one book where the Warriors are underdogs at home, but on most books they're the favorite. On my book, they're the favorite. So we'll say that there are 3 home dogs tonight. We'll dive into these a little bit more in detail later, obviously, but just to get them on your radar, the Pistons are home dogs against the Hawks, the Hornets are home dogs against the Heat, and the Pelicans are home dogs against the Mavericks. Some of those I think are injury related, but like I said, we'll dive in a little bit later. So if you just want to take that strategy of home dogs, then you're looking to place all 3 of those bets, and you hope to go 2-1. The Wizards aren't in that, so that strategy again is undefeated whenever you take out the Wizards. But before we start diving in game to game, let's go back to the over-unders issue here, because I think I did find a pattern. Whenever you start looking at the gray and the neutral colored courts, overs are only 2 and 3, which means unders obviously are 3 and 2. One of those unders that doesn't hit on the gray court so far is, of course, again, the Washington Wizards, who they lost their over by 1 point, or just half a point, because way to go, Washington. Of course you did. The over was 240.5, and they lost 124 to 117, which is 241, losing by half a point. So if we want to take the Wizards out of that, again, giving up 124 points to Charlotte, then the gray neutral court unders is 3-1 instead of 3 and 2, and you're making money there if you just stay away from the Washington Wizards. Which, if you take anything out of today's podcast and discussion about the in-season tournament, it's just stay away from the Wizards. Now, those are the gray and the neutral colored courts. Let's take a look at the colorful courts. You know, players have said that you can feel that there's a different vibe about the game. They just can't quite put their finger on it. Have you seen some of these games? You can't put your finger on it? The whole court is purple. What do you mean? The whole court is orange. The whole court is bright yellow. It's baby blue. What do you mean you can't put your finger on what's different about the game? It's pretty obvious to everybody that's watching. So, if you just look at the colorful courts, the ones that don't look like a 1960s Soviet bunker or a natural basketball court, ones that don't evoke a lot of emotion, if you take those out and you just look at the colorful courts, those overs are 7-3. That's pretty good. Maybe there's a little something to this. 7-3. You could bet that. You could make a little bit of money. But let's take this one step further, because there's one color out of all the courts that seems to be affecting scoring more than any of the others. Can you guess what color it is? I'll give you a second. Go through your Roy G. Biv. Which color do you think people have not shot well on, have not scored much on? Yeah, you got your answer? All right, write it down. Okay. Red courts. The over in red court games played on a predominantly red court, are 1-3. And the only time that the over hit, it hit by 1 point in an overtime game between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Portland Trail Blazers. So if you're just looking at regulation over-unders, red courts are 0-4 on the over. That's right. So if you take out the red court stats, colorful courts are 6-0. Colorful courts. So in the Roy G. Biv, take out red. So in the Oi G. Biv color chart, those courts are 6-0. That's right. That's right. I think we found something. I mean, home dogs are 6-1. Colorful non-red courts are 6-0 on the over. Grays and neutral courts are hitting on the under. It all makes sense. If you play the psychology of it, these are in-season tournament games. They mean a little bit more. The home dogs are playing in front of their home crowd. They know something means something. Unless it's a gray court, unless it's a neutral color court, then there's nothing. Then they really can't put their finger on what's different about it. Then it really is just, it's the in-season tournament. Okay, well, who cares? But when you're playing on a purple court, you're playing on a baby blue court, you get all jazzed up. This means a little something. We're going to play this strategy tonight. This is going to affect all of our bets. I've got all of the courts for tonight's game color-coded into what we're going to do with them. And we're going to see if this strategy continues to play out. But shh. Don't say anything too loud. Don't tell the bookies. We got to keep this to ourselves. Okay, if you're listening to this podcast, share the podcast, obviously, at The Grind Podcast on Twitter. Oh, you didn't see a plug coming there, did you? Woo, getting slick over here. That's right. Follow at The Grind Podcast on Twitter or at The Grind Sports Podcast on YouTube. Also find us on Spotify, Apple Music. You know where we are. But they got to listen to the pod to get this betting strategy. Okay? This is just between me and you and hopefully hundreds and maybe even thousands of other people at some point. All right, so real quick, let's look at the courts for tonight. But you never heard that on a sports podcast, huh? Let's see what court we're playing on to see what we're going to bet on. That's right. We approach things differently here at The Grind. So if you're watching the video podcast, I've got the court shown there. And you can see why you just wouldn't really want to play too hard on these. Doesn't it just kind of look dull? I mean, what did they do to the Warriors there? So these are our 3 games. Brooklyn's at home, Detroit's at home, and Golden State's at home. And we're going to play all 3 of these unders. Now, looking at the colorful court side of things, we've got the Hornets with a cool-looking court, as you can see there. The Jazz with maybe the coolest-looking court. Again, I think all of these look terrible on television. Like, watching the Lakers-Suns game, it was hard to see what was going on. You just don't... your brain isn't used to picking up stuff on a purple backdrop. It makes for awful television. And then you've got the Nuggets at home with their 52-80 court, which has already hit 1 over. And then the Pelicans at home with the boldest color scheme, I think, for any court, with the dark purple and lime green, which was not really the colors that I was pegging for the Pelicans. But it'll definitely be something that we've never seen before on TV. It's even gaudier, I think, than the Phoenix Suns one. Now, just looking at that, after explaining the theory to you, look at those courts. Couldn't you see yourself getting up to play on that Hornets court? I know it's not super bright, but that's a cool color. I mean, that Jazz court looks sick. The Nuggets court looks fun. I'm buying into, I'm confirming my own bias here. I would like to play on these courts at least once. Now, unfortunately, we do not have any red court games tonight to test that theory out. But, we've got 4 colorful ones and we've got 3 bland ones. So we've got, overs and unders picked on all 7 games tonight. I'm probably going to do a little bitty round robin, probably with like 4 game parlays. You hope to hit maybe 5 of these over or unders. If you hit 6, then you're making really good money. But, if you hit 5 and you're doing 4 leg parlays on a round robin, then you probably make what, like 4 to 1 on your money. If you get 4 out of 7 with 4 leg parlays, you probably lose like half a unit or half of your bet, I guess, since you're going to have to place a lot of bets. But check your own bookie for odds and how they do all that. Okay, so that's the theory tonight for the courts. I like it. We're going to run with it. We'll see how it happens. Tail along if you'd like, but do it at your own caution. Know that this is an unproven system. We're just throwing some fun theories out there and seeing what happens. Okay, and with that, let's get into our regularly scheduled programming. The first game tonight that we have up is the Hawks and the Pistons on that gray court. This opened up at Hawks -3. It's now moved to Hawks -4. Large percentage of the bets, about 2 to 1, are coming in on the Hawks, and even more money is coming in on the Hawks. One thing that really caught my eye here is when we look at the injury report, Trae Young is out for personal reasons tonight. Now, the Pistons also have Jalen Duren out again. Bojan Bogdanovic is obviously still out. Joe Harris is out. Monte Morris is still out. And the Pistons have lost 9 in a row. But Trae Young's out. The Hawks, as we've covered, like to run a lot of pick and roll. Are they going to know what to do on offense? We're already taking the under on this game because it's on a great court. That's telling us something. The system's telling us something. And so this is a game that I've actually already bet because I was worried that the line was going to move whenever I saw that Trae Young was out. And so we're taking the Pistons because, like I said, this is one of our home dog games. We got to trust in our dogs to show up at the in-season tournament, show up for the fans on that ugly, sleepy court in Detroit. That's right. We're taking the under, and we're taking the Pistons +3.5. Actually, sorry, +4 is what I got them at. Some books are +4.5. So we're fading the public. We're fading the sharps. We're betting our own system here. Everyone's down the Pistons just because they've lost a measly 7 games in a row or 6 games in a row, whatever it is. Who cares? It doesn't mean anything. They're covering tonight at home. All right, next up we've got the Miami Heat traveling to Charlotte to take on the Hornets, and this is another underdog game, another home underdog game. The Heat are favored by 2.5. That's what it opened at. It's moved to 3.5. On some books, you can get it at 5.5. The public is pretty split on this, but a lot of the money is coming in on the Heat. The sharps are all about the Heat culture. Like I said, the bets are split about 50-50. The money is 9 to 1 on the Heat. Anybody that's anybody is taking the Heat here. And why wouldn't you? After starting off 1-4, the Heat have rattled off 5 wins in a row. The last 3 coming on the road, and now they get to go play in Charlotte, where anybody can win, even the Wizards can win. This is why we have systems, everyone. I think the Hornets show up tonight. This seems a little too easy. I think this is my fishy line of the night, because this line's already moved a point from where it opened, and on different books there's up to a 2-point difference. That tells me money's moving this. The books know something's up here. They're trying to lure everybody in to come take the heat. This is our fishy line of the night. We have a home dog on a colorful court. Give me the Hornets plus 4.5. Next game up, we've got Pacers at 76ers in Philadelphia. This started off as a 6.5 point line for the Sixers. It's dropped to around 4.5, 5. Most of the bets are coming in on the Pacers. People still don't believe in the Sixers, and a lot of the money is coming in on the Pacers. I mean, what else does Tyrese Maxey have to do to get a little bit of respect on his name? Well, Tyrese, I don't think this is really about you. Joel Embiid is questionable tonight. The Pacers, other than Daniel Tice, pretty healthy tonight. And these teams just played. They just played 2 days ago. And the Pacers lost by 11 whenever Tyrese Maxey went off for his 50 burger. So again, this game is on a crappy looking court. I think we could see I don't expect to see another 50-point game out of Tyrese Maxey, and especially if Embiid's not playing. So we're going to hold off. We're going to see if Embiid gets cleared. Might even wait until tip, see if Embiid looks spry, if he is playing. But I'm leaning the Pacers here. As we've talked about, home dogs or home favorites aren't doing great here in the tournament. These games seem to be pretty close. As we've talked about, a good amount of the money and stuff is coming in on the Pacers. I think that is obviously due to Embiid, but I tend to agree with that sentiment. We're going to wait and see how this shakes out as far as who's playing or not, but we're leaning Pacers, are currently around plus 5. All right, next up, we've got Magic at Nets in Brooklyn. This opened up at 2.5 for the Nets, and it's staying right about there. But the public hates that number. They are hammering the Magic plus 3. Everyone's on the Paulo bandwagon. The Paulo Banchero bandwagon. How can I? Nope, sorry. Failed attempt at a pun. But, you got to try. But a large amount of the bets. The public loves the Magic. The Sharps are not as convinced. There's a slight discrepancy between the Sharp money and the public money, with the Sharps slightly leaning towards the Nets. And you guys know here at the Grind Podcast, we love the Nets. We're all about the Nets. But they're missing Ben Simmons tonight. They're also missing their best player so far this season, Cam Thomas. Now, Lonnie Walker has been cleared as available tonight, but we all know that this team runs through Cam Thomas and Ben Simmons. Cam Thomas has missed the last 2 games for the Nets, which was a win against the Wizards, an 8-point win, and not very impressive, and then a 14-point loss at Boston, which isn't a terrible loss, but they obviously didn't look that great, The Magic are coming in with the same lineup that they've been running. I think that the Sharps are leaning a little bit towards the Nets. Think that there's going to get a little in-season tournament pop. But, again, we don't really like home favorites here in the tournament. We at least know that they're not bulletproof at home. I just don't see the Nets being able to get good shots late in the game if this thing is still close, whenever I know that the Magic are going to be able to run their stuff. I don't expect Brooklyn to have a huge home court advantage tonight, even though it is the in-season tournament. It's in Brooklyn on a Tuesday. Probably not the most hostile environment to play a game. So I'm going to lean here with the public. Screw the sharp discrepancy. Give me the Magic plus 3. All right, next up, we've got Spurs traveling to Oklahoma City to take on the Thunder, where the Thunder opened up as 7.5 point favorites. That line is now anywhere from 9 all the way up to 10.5. The bets are coming in about split, but a lot of the money is in on the Thunder. But as usual here, if you take a look at the injury report, it's pretty revealing to why. The Thunder are completely healthy. Meanwhile, for the Spurs, they're sitting Trey Jones. Keldon Johnson's also out. Jeremy Sohan is questionable, which, if you ask me, it's probably better if he sits. Let's see a little bit more Wemby. But this is the matchup of the night. We get Wemby versus Chet, the two frontrunners for Rookie of the Year. Now the Spurs come in on a 5-game losing streak. They lost to Toronto at home in overtime. Went and lost 2 in a row on the road against Indy and New York. And then they lost at home to one of the better teams in the NBA, the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then they lost again to kind of a depleted Heat team. Hasn't been a great look for the Spurs so far. Granted, those games weren't blowouts or anything. The last 2, they lost by an average of 6 points. But that Miami loss is a little bit concerning. The Thunder are fully healthy, and we know that whenever the Thunder have been healthy this year, they've looked really, really good, like a top 6 team in the West at least. And so I think there was a little bit of value here in this line whenever it was 7.5, but now that it's been bet up to 9, 10-ish on some books, a lot of the sharps are coming in on the Thunder, and Vegas seems to be respecting it. Vegas is moving this line with them. And so I'm a little hesitant. Like, if you're not playing all the games all the time, I'd probably just stay away from this one. 10-point lines are dangerous. You know, you can get smoked in a game in the NBA and lose by 9. So I'll bet it at some point, I'm sure. But I'm probably going to wait a little bit closer to tip. Maybe catch this one live. At least until Wemby goes out. Maybe the Spurs win the first couple minutes. You can get this line down at 6 or 7, back around where it opened. That's how I'm going to play it. And if the Thunder just come out and they smoke them from start to finish, then I'll probably miss the bet. But for sake of always making a bet on every game, we're going to take the Thunder here, -10.
I don't know why I've been only saying there's 7 games tonight. I'm going to sound silly. There's 10 games tonight. So those graphics that I was referencing earlier are going to be a little bit different than I was thinking. So there's more courts on there. You can see all of the colorful courts and non-colorful courts. Geez, what a flub, but it's getting late. I don't have time to re-record this. The one thing that does change is that we do have a red court game. The Philadelphia 76ers court is bright red. And so we will be betting the under on that game. We do have a red court to see if we can balance that out. So the ones that I didn't talk about are all colorful courts. Whenever we're looking at that, we've got the bright yellow Lakers court and then the bright blue Thunder court. And so those are 3 additional over-unders that I didn't talk about earlier because I didn't realize. I knew that I had the games wrong. I knew that this was taking a little long for 7 games. Okay, so that means we're only halfway through. I'm going to have to speed this up. Jeez. All right, we've got Mavericks at Pelicans. Pelicans started off as 2.5-point favorites. This is now swung to Mavericks -4. I think the big change here, from what I'm seeing, is that Herbert Jones is now questionable. I don't know if Herb Jones is worth a 4-point swing. The public seems to like the Mavericks, a decent amount of bets coming in on Dallas, and the Sharps are less convinced they seem to be balancing it out towards the Pelicans. I'm going to have to do a little bit more research that I don't have time to do here, but now that the Pelicans are dogs, they do qualify for our in-season tournament home dog system. So we will be throwing the Pelicans in at +4. Again, barring anything popping up, anything new popping up via the news or Twitter or injury report, we'll hold off and make that bet a little bit closer to game time. But we are going to take the Pelicans +4 as far as you guys are concerned. All right, next up, Blazers in Utah taking on the Jazz. This opened up as 3-point favorites for the Jazz. This has moved to 6-point favorites. A good amount of the public likes the Jazz, with a lot of sharp money coming in on the Blazers. Why anyone would bet on the Blazers here is kind of beyond me. Scoot Henderson is still out. Anthony Simons is still out. Malcolm Brogdon is out. Robert Williams is obviously out for the season. The only thing that I'm thinking is the Jazz aren't going to have Walker Kessler. He's out for the night. But the Jazz have been on the road for their last 4 games. And the Blazers stink. I think that the Jazz come out and put it on a Blazers team that's lost 3 in a row. They're in the middle of a road trip. They don't seem too excited. They've lost 2 pretty close games against the Kings and the Lakers. I don't see them getting super up for this game. I think that the Jazz win handily. Give me the Jazz -6. Next up, we've got probably our game of the night, which is the Minnesota Timberwolves rematching against the Golden State Warriors. If you remember, they played just 2 nights ago. The Warriors opened up as 4.5-point favorites. That line has moved down to 1. On a couple books, you can actually get the Warriors +3, but we're not going to count that because that's only one of the books. The betting public loves the Wolves here. Everybody's in love with that. Number 1 defense, Wolves. And as much as the public loves them, the Sharps love them even more. 90% of the money is coming in on the T-Wolves. That clip of Anthony Edwards talking crap to Draymond went viral. Everybody knows that Clay's played like crap so far this year. Remember, it wasn't more than 10 days ago that everyone was talking, are the Warriors the second best team in the West? Now they drop a couple. Minnesota looks good. It has a couple high-profile wins against the Nuggets, against the Celtics. And now everyone thinks that the Warriors are done and that the Wolves are here and the Wolves are here to stay. Well, you know what? I just looked at the injury report, and I'm going to agree with them. Because unfortunately, everyone, you might be hearing this here first, Steph Curry is out tonight. This is no longer the game of the night. This game sucks now. This game is now no longer fun. I'm actually going to pause the podcast right now and go in and bet this before it moves any further against the Wolves. Yep, that news just dropped because I was only able to get the Wolves at -3. So that thing has really swung. So we are going to go against our home dogs theory. But, you know, this thing, Steph Curry's worth way more than 5 points, and that's as far as that thing swung. So, hey, this is why you build a system and you learn the rules so that you learn when's a good time to break them. Now, I'm sure that the Warriors will come out and win anyway, straight up, blow them out by 50. But we're taking the T-Wolves -3. Let's go. All right, next up, what everyone probably thought was going to be the game of the night about a week ago, which is the LA Clippers traveling to the Mile High City to take on the Nuggets. This opened up as Nuggets -5.5, and it's somewhere between 4.5 and 5.5 now. Obviously, the betting public loves the Nuggets here at home in the in-season tournament. The Clippers have looked terrible since they brought in James Harden. James Harden's off and on numbers are awful. I don't have them off the top of my head, but it's like a 40% swing plus minus whenever he's on and off. I'll let you guess which direction that goes. So a large amount of the betting public is here on the Nuggets, like 85% of the bets, and it's about the same for the money. So the Sharps tend to agree with the public here, and the line doesn't seem to be moving much, which is a little suspicious. One thing to note here for the Nuggets is they are still missing their number 2 in command, Jamal Murray. And they've managed to get by without him, but their offense has not been nearly as explosive with him out. And I think that Murray really gets after it on the defensive end. And the Clippers are bringing everybody with them except for Mason Plumlee still. Maybe this is the day that things start to click for the Clippers. Maybe they figure out their lineups. I'm not guessing so. I don't think James Harden's going to come in super ready for this game. There's a lot to do in Denver that ain't playing basketball. You know what I mean? Do I need to spell it out for you? I'm just kidding. I don't know if James Harden partakes in marijuana or not, but I know that he's not used to running at elevation. I'm not going to overthink this. Give me the Nuggets -5. And finally, last game of the night, we've got my Memphis Grizzlies going on to take on the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers opened up as 4.5-point favorites. It's now somewhere between 6 and 7, depending on where you're looking. A lot of the public loves the Lakers. Obviously, the Grizzlies have fallen in the eye of, the betting public, as they should. But this is a late tip. Not going to say too much about this game here, mainly because this podcast is running a little long now. But AD is probable tonight. LeBron, however, is questionable with a left calf contusion. And the Grizzlies still have Xavier Tillman questionable. It'll be interesting to see whether or not he gets back into the lineup or not. So I'm going to monitor the injury report here before I lean one way or the other on this game. If LeBron plays and this line stays around 6, then I think that there's quite a bit of value there. If LeBron's not playing, he is part of every one of their good lineups. The rest of the team maybe seems to be clicking a little bit better, but you take LeBron out of there, and I think that the Grizzlies could at least keep this close. I don't think that they'll win, but 6-7 points is going to be a lot. Obviously, that's going to change depending on LeBron's status, but we don't want to jump the gun here. We're going to wait on that, but those are my feelings on the game. So that is it for the podcast. Hopefully you got to listen to this before tonight's action started. Follow along on Twitter at The Grind Podcast for final plays. And we'll see if these betting systems work tonight. Interested to see how it plays out. Thanks again for joining, everyone. I've been your host, Devin Murray. We will see you tomorrow on The Grind.
Oh, I'm home, and she's off to bed. Oh no, money, my favorite life.